If you're thinking about moving to Albania or even staying long term, you're going to need to know how the money system works. We get questions all the time. Do I need to bring euros? Can I bring cash? Can I convert cash when I get there? How do I use my card? We don't want you to get tripped up. So in this video, we're going to cover all those topics and more, so you have a good understanding of what currency you need and how transacting works when you're here in Albania. But first, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Smile Abroad. We release new videos regularly about how you can make a new life abroad in Albania. So please hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. It helps grow our channel and makes it possible to do what we do.
Thank you for subscribing and following along. It really does matter a lot.
Talking about the currency here in Albania, what is it?
It's the Albanian Lek.
And how is that spelled? L-E-K, is that correct?
LEK is common. The actual currency code is ALL. It's also abbreviated with a capital L period sometimes.
And one thing to know about it is that it comes in a different denomination. So I'll show you some bills here. This is the 10,000 Lek note, which is their equivalent of like a 100 euro bill. This is the 50 Lek note, 5,000 Lek note, their equivalent of about 50 euros. Then you have 2,000 Lek, which is like their 20. And then the 1,000 Lek bill. I really like the currency here. I think it's actually a very beautiful currency. And the nice thing is, compared to the United States, they're different sizes depending on the denomination. So the 500 Lek bill, and then you have a 200 Lek bill. And actually, this one's pretty cool. As you can see, it's kind of see-through there to be able to detect fraud.
So something that really confuses people initially is the extra zeros. You know, as an American, as someone using the euro or a pound, you're used to a $5 bill, a €5 bill, a €50 bill. If you struggle with this, just remember to subtract 2 zeros, and you roughly have the euro equivalent. So the 5,000 Lek is about 50 euros. It's generally pegged to that. The 10,000 Lek bill is fairly uncommon. Like, you can go to the bank and get them. People do accept them, but you're not going to get that out of an ATM. And just for comparison's sake, right now, as of today, a 10,000 Lek bill is worth about 122 US dollars.
Exchange rates are definitely something to be aware of. And in the year that we have been in Albania, they have fluctuated and actually dropped dramatically. I remember in January, it was something like 94 Lek per US dollar.
Yeah, it was very close to 1-to-1 in January. February, we started seeing a slide, and the dollar has weakened since then against both the euro and the Lek, because the Lek is generally pegged pretty close to the euro.
That's something that's important to keep in mind if you're coming from the US or anywhere. Currency fluctuations can dramatically affect your cost of living, and it's out of your control. You know, your landlord might not raise your rent 20%, but if your currency is worth 20% less and your lease is negotiated in Lek, that's going to affect you. And we've actually heard from quite a few expats who ended up having to move because they found their places to be unaffordable. Anything else you want to talk about the basics of the currency?
There are also coins. We don't have those in front of us. There's a 5 Lek coin, a 10 Lek coin, a 20 Lek coin, a 50 Lek coin, and a 100 Lek coin. They're pretty commonly used. Something interesting you'll see in markets and things, if something rings up to a very odd number and there are like 2 or 3 Lek, at the end of the transaction, they just round it.
Round it to the nearest 5. Because the 5 Lek coin, at least to our knowledge, is the smallest coin that is in circulation right now.
Yeah.
And interestingly, from an American perspective, there's no such thing as like a $1 bill. You have your 200 Lek bill, you know, which is like a $2 bill. But for 100 Lek, that goes down to being a coin.
And they use coins a lot. I mean, there are a lot of 100 Lek coins. I frequently will grab 300 or 400 Lek coins and run down to the grocery store for something without any paper bills in my pocket. So they're commonly used.
So let's talk a little bit about cash versus card. I know in the US I was really used to paying for almost everything with my credit card, with my Apple Pay, with my tap and go. But here it's a much more cash-based economy.
Yeah, digital payments are possible in many places. However, a lot of people do not like to take cards for probably a number of reasons. One of the primary ones, the fees for them are fairly high, so they try to avoid that. Another thing to remember, there's not the Western payment processing infrastructure in place here that we're used to. Not everyone has credit card machines. Businesses, when they open a bank account, they get a credit card processing terminal generally through the bank that they operate in. So when you go into a market, you will actually see a Raiffeisen credit card terminal or an Intesa Sanpaolo credit card terminal. And those work very much like other places in Europe. If you're at a restaurant, they bring the terminal to you. You can tap to pay. Some businesses do require that you spend a certain amount of money if you're going to pay with a card, or they just don't accept cards at all.
One thing that's important to remember is that there are a lot of places that only accept cash. So if you, for some reason, don't have any lek on you or don't have any euro on you or don't have any cash on you, make sure you clarify before you order something at a restaurant or before you go to check out that they do accept card. Just ask at the front and don't be offended if the answer to that question is no. That just means you need to get some more cash out, which actually is a good segue to our next topic, which is how to get cash here in Albania, usually using like an ATM.
Yeah, people really worry about this that have never been to the country before. How am I going to get cash? Do I need to bring currency to exchange at an exchange office? Can I get lek from abroad? The answer to that is no. It is a closed currency. You need to get it in the country after arrival, but there are ATMs everywhere. It's very accessible. You just put your card in the ATM or you can tap. We generally recommend to tap in case there's an issue with the ATM that keeps your card. You don't want to deal with that. So you tap and then you select your language. Most ATMs you're going to find an Albanian language option, an English language option, and an Italian language option. Select the language of your preference, and then you're going to be prompted the amount that you want to withdraw. That's going to be presented in lek. Many ATMs show up to 75,000 lek. We generally use ABI, the American Bank of Investments, here in Saranda at least. You can withdraw up to 150,000 lek in one transaction. For someone staying here for a while, it's beneficial to draw a larger amount of money out once, so you pay one ATM fee. ABI charges 500 lek per transaction fee. And then the other thing that you really need to know, and this is very important, decline the conversion. You will be prompted a couple of times about this, and you want to decline conversion. Some ATMs use tricky language for this. Some of them move the button between the first and second screen. Decline the conversion. These ATMs are charging something between 9 and 10% usually for the foreign transaction fee unless you're using a local Albanian debit card. So you don't want to do that. The bank in your home country is going to be much more affordable. I did this just last week for a comparison for someone. The fee, if I had selected conversion, would have been $167, the commission that the bank was going to take. By declining conversion, I saved that money. There's no reason that I'm aware of that you want the bank to do the conversion for you. If your home bank charges more than 9 or 10% for a foreign transaction fee, find a new bank before you come to Albania or travel in general.
And I think that's actually a really good point. One thing for travelers, expats, nomads, or if you're going to be moving here to Albania, is to make sure that you get your home banking relationship squared away before you go. We recommend banks like Charles Schwab or HSBC for people in the United States because they often reimburse ATM fees and they don't charge foreign transaction fees. You also need to be aware of your withdrawal limits. I know that a lot of small credit unions limit you to withdrawing 500 US dollars per day from an ATM, especially a foreign ATM. So make sure that you communicate and set reasonable withdrawal limits with your bank ahead of time. And also make sure to give your banks awareness of where you're going to be in the world so they don't decline a transaction. I know that I had the experience of being on a spontaneous road trip in Bosnia, and I had not notified the bank ahead of time that I'd be in Bosnia, and so it declined my transaction at the ATM. No big deal. I just had to go notify the bank that it was indeed me in Bosnia that was making that transaction. So definitely square away your banking relationships and choose a bank that's going to support you internationally rather than one that might just be around the corner from your house in the USA.
Wise is another option that people consider often. It's not a bad option. We have a Wise account as well. What I would tell you about that is it's not supported technically in Albania. Your card will work, you will be able to pay here, but you can't open a Wise account from Albania. So you need to make sure to have all of these things worked out before you move. That will make your life much easier.
Well, now that we have gone to the ATM and are stocked up on cash, I guess it's probably time to pay some bills. I know we all have monthly bills that we have to pay on a regular basis, things like the electricity bill, the water bill, the cell phone bill, the internet bill. Sam, talk a little bit about what that process is like here in Albania, paying those bills.
Yeah, so it's all cash based. I'm not aware of any of these providers that will take cards for your utility bills. When you go in to pay your water or your electricity bill, you're carrying in a sort of old fashioned looking booklet. They, at the time you walk in, look up the balance that you owe. They tell you, and then you pay them and they fill out a little receipt. It's that simple, but they don't take cards. The same is true for cell phone. You walk into the cell phone store, they ask for your phone number and they tell you what you owe. You hand them cash, they give you some change, off you go.
They will take a card at Vodafone or 1AL, and you can pay online for those, but it's not as easy to set up as it is just to pay in cash.
I went into Vodafone last month to pay the bill and they told me that they would not take a card. So I don't know.
So it depends on the Vodafone you go to.
Or maybe the day, because remember, these credit card terminals that they use are connected through a cellular network. Maybe they're down. We have had many instances where people are having trouble with their credit card machines. That's, again, another reason that cards are not as common here and card processing is not as common. Cash is definitely preferred.
For things like cell phone and internet, you can definitely pay ahead of time. So, for example, we usually pay for our internet 3 months at a time. That's 4,500 Lek for 3 months of internet. And it's nice to not have to remember to go to a specific place on a specific day. But there is really not a concept like, the auto pay, automatic billing like you have in the United States for these types of transactions. And personally, I really like that. I've experienced quite a bit of subscription fatigue in the US where it was like, man, who is constantly tapping my card? Who is constantly tapping my bank account? What bill is this? I really grew tired of that. And so coming to a cash-based society, I found to give me a much greater feeling of control over cash in versus cash out than when everything was either via card or via auto pay.
It was definitely an adjustment for me. I appreciated the convenience of like the bills just getting paid. But at the same time, you know what you're paying now. It feels a little quaint, but it's very easy to do. You get into a nice routine with it. I walk in to pay the internet. They know me. They take my money. We have a short little conversation and off I go.
So paying your monthly bills, of course, paying your groceries, you can figure that out. But how about things like rent or big purchases? Those are things, usually I guess I would think to do via bank transfer or something like that.
That is possible, and that is how some things are done here. If you have a local Albanian bank, you can transfer money to other local Albanian banks. A lot of landlords prefer cash.
Cash,
though.
cash.
Everybody wants cash. So you really need to make sure that you have a plan to be able to withdraw cash. Like we mentioned earlier in the video about ATMs, we generally go withdraw a large lump sum as we need it and then burn that down so we avoid paying a lot of ATM fees. We do that for things like rent too. That's what the landlord asked for. We're happy to accommodate. But you can use a bank transfer once you have an Albanian bank account to make these larger purchases.
We'll go into the process of opening an Albanian bank account in later videos, but it is complicated. It requires you at a minimum to have a notarized lease, but also it can vary depending on the day or the mood of the person you're dealing with, whether or not they'll open one for you, especially as an American.
It varies greatly. And coming from a Western mindset with banking, it can be a little frustrating. For instance, my name has been spelled wrong on our business bank account for months, and the people at the bank don't care. They don't think it makes any difference. Every time I look at it, I'm like, I'm never going to be able to withdraw money from this account.
Yeah, he gets in a panic.
So there are some things to get used to.
Or like when you go in to sit at the desk and you're making a deposit, and for some reason it takes like 2 phone calls and a trip to a supervisor. I'm just like, it's a deposit. But you end up realizing things work a little different here. With grace and patience, everything ends up working itself out. And you just kind of have to lean into the discomfort of, this is not the banking experience I'm used to, but it is the banking experience that we have, and it's going to work out.
And it does work. It does work. You just have to be patient and understand that like things work a little differently here.
I think a practical tip for rent, for big purchases, for purchases in general, it can be really helpful to negotiate and clarify costs in euro. The lek and euro are usually very closely correlated, within a couple cents of each other. And most people are willing to talk with you and speak with you in euro just because the denominations can get a bit confusing. So when in doubt, clarify in euro, even if you're going to be paying in lek. A lot of places will accept euro and lek interchangeably, but just know that if you are paying in euro, you are at the mercy of the merchant to give you a favorable or sometimes unfavorable exchange rate. So I was at the grocery store recently and they had a sign that said 100 lek equals 0.93 euro. That's not the real exchange rate right now. It's definitely biased in favor of the grocery store, but if all you have is euro and you're at the grocery store, that's what you're going to end up paying. I know in the US, we're really used to things like apps or services that make life easier. What banking or money apps do you feel make life easier here in Albania?
So when you have an Albanian bank account, you generally do have online banking that you can use. It's not as modernized as like some Western solutions like Wise or our HSBC account, for instance. What I would say is like these are things that I still use regularly. So we maintain a banking relationship in the US. I frequently use our HSBC app to move money between checking and savings account and do a lot of the administrative tasks that you would need. The same is true with our Wise account. So having those apps set up and accessible, it's very important. So you can sort of at your fingertips manage your money when you're on the way to the ATM to withdraw it.
This has been a pretty comprehensive video, but to kind of close out, let's offer some practical tips to people on cash management and whatnot while they're here in Albania.
As a Westerner, you will be surprised by the amount of cash you see people carrying. This is a very safe place, and people feel safe with their money. Oftentimes, like even retailers, they just have a cabinet drawer that they manage change out of. It's not locked in like a cash register. It's a very high trust society, and they like their cash. Men and women both carry cash in some sort of shoulder bag usually or something with them. And maybe another tip, this is really dependent on the city you're in, but people are not always prepared with change, even though they insist on taking cash. So it behooves you to have a variety of bills so you can get pretty close to the change that you need to pay for something. I have more than once taking a 5,000 lek bill in to pay for something that's maybe 10,000 lek. I'm thinking about in Vlora specifically. This has happened a couple of times, and they just don't have change. So
Sometimes they need to run to their friend at the store next door to get change.
they run to their friend or they look to you to go figure it out. So carry a diversity of bills so you're prepared to pay. Another thing to remember, everyone should issue you a receipt. And on that receipt, there's actually a QR code you can scan. You can see the taxes that were paid to help sort of legitimize the merchant and make sure that it's not what would you say, a nefarious transaction of some sort. They're not skirting the tax
the
law.
law requires all B2C, so business to customer invoices or receipts, to carry a QR code or number shows in real time that that transaction's been reported to the government and their taxes have been properly applied to that invoice.
So one other kind of final tip, the tipping culture here is very different than it is in Western countries. You're leaving maybe 100 lek, 200 lek at dinner at most. Tipping is not the norm. It is very much appreciated, but it's not something that is commonly done. And frankly, it's somewhat problematic if people start tipping huge amounts of money. Then that expectation builds for everyone, and the local economy can't support that. Suddenly, locals can't afford to go out and eat if their bill is increased by 20%. There's a lot to think about and talk about with money, but at the end of the day, it's very simple. It's just another currency. The bills look different, but it's currency. Go to the ATM, withdraw some, spend it. You'll quickly figure it out. Just make sure your banking relationship at home is set up to support foreign travel like it would be anywhere else, and you'll be okay.
I would additionally add, to wrap up, that you can feel very safe here. There's not the risk of pickpockets in the same way that there are in other European countries. People generally carry large sums of cash on them and feel very safe. We feel very safe existing in a cash-based economy. And frankly, I've really appreciated the level of control that it's given me over money. There's something about handing over a 5,000 lek bill instead of tapping my card for a $50 purchase that makes it feel much more real and makes me feel much more in control.
I really like it. I don't use a card unless I need to for some reason. I've really adopted this cash society and have grown to appreciate it.
If you have any questions for us, questions about cash, money, or move into Albania or anything like that, please drop them in the comments or check out our website, smileabroad.al. We answer all your questions in the comments and would love if you would be a member of our community.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and we hope you have a great rest of your day and hope to see you in Albania soon.
Bye.